Okay, so we're back with part 2 of Jonathan's medical history. The first part we went over his condition, what happened at birth, and his failure to meet some of his milestones, and the beginning of his seizure disorder. And with this video, I kind of like to talk about some of the procedures and things that he's had to have done after the initial findings. I talked a little bit about the genetic condition that he has. I didn't go into any detail with it, but I do plan on doing another part to this medical history that will describe his genetic condition that he has in detail, because it's a lot in itself. But with this video, I kind of wanted to just make a part 2 to just his general medical history and where we're at. So we left off with him having the seizures at 9 months old, the infantile spasms, and then the Lennox-Gastaut that he was later diagnosed with, the seizure disorder. And we talked about him having a GJ tube. He has a GJ tube for his feedings. And in this video, I kind of just wanted to talk about the surgical procedures and where things went from that point on till now. Now, we were at about a year. Well, I think the G-tube was in 2017, so he was a little over a year. And so he started, everything was it did really good there for a while. And we were dealing with this delays, going to physical therapies, going back and forth to the doctor's appointments, and everything kind of just mellowed out. We were still dealing with the tonic seizures and trying to figure out what we were going to do to control those, because they're, like I said, they're very hard to control, or the Lennox-Gastaut is hard to control in itself. Nothing has, even till now, nothing has completely eliminated his seizures. Jonathan probably has 5 to 10 seizures a night. The seizures that he does is only during the night. Now, we are suspecting that he may have some focal seizures during the day, and that's just kind of like a staring, he'll just kind of stare off, and it's hard to get his attention. Never caught one of those on an EEG to prove it, but that we're suspecting that he may actually have those. But the tonic seizures, the ones that he has every night, they were caught on an EEG, not at this point in time showing to be very damaging to his brain. They're just a short burst seizure, but with Lennox-Gastaut and his condition, there's chances that it could turn into something worse. So we're always trying to eliminate. I would say we are controlled at a steady place right now, but the goal is to eliminate the seizures, obviously. So that's where we're at, seizure speaking. After his GJ tube was placed, the reflux continued to be a terrible thing for Jonathan. So with a lot of thought and prayer and guidance from the doctors and surgeons, they decided to do what's called a Nissen fundoplication. And what that does is it's the procedure to where they go in and they tie the stomach. And I'm not going to get technical with it because I couldn't begin to explain the technicalities of it. But anyway, they tie the stomach to where that you're not supposed to be able to vomit, which is also stops the reflux from coming on up into his throat. So he had that fundoplication done, worked for about 6 months, and then he started vomiting, which over time we either thought it had loosened or maybe completely slipped. So now we've learned that it has completely slipped, so he can vomit just like anybody else, and he still has issues with the reflux, trying to manage them with medications and stuff. We don't want to have that surgery again, because the reconstruction of a surgery like that is a bigger deal than just going in and doing it. So unless it becomes a life-threatening situation, we won't redo that surgery. He's also with his respiratory issues. Respiratory started, I would say the very beginning of 2018 is when Jonathan's real bad respiratory issues started. He was having a hard time keeping his O2 levels up. He was having apnea at night, quitting breathing and things like that. So by about August, I think, is when it really started happening. That was actually his first really bad respiratory distress incident was on August the 24th, which happens to be my birthday. But we I'm pretty certain they flew. No, maybe it was an ambulance trip. Anyway, he's been flown out like 3 different times, and I can't remember, 3 or 4, and I can't remember to which ones for why he was flown out each of the times. But anyway, got down there, and really the only terrible experience that we've had with Erlanger ever, T.C. Thompson's a bad ER doctor. He wouldn't listen to me, and everybody else was starting to understand me and Jonathan that, hey, mom brings him in. This is a long way. There's usually something wrong with him. You need to listen to her because she knows him. So got down there, ended up being they had actually discharged Jonathan close to signing the discharge papers. He was going to be transported back home by ambulance due to some oxygen issues. Otherwise, this doctor thought he was okay to go home. I wasn't. I mean, I still had a terrible gut feeling, I guess you could say, that mama premonition thing, but his numbers looked good, and I agreed with the doctor that, hey, yeah, I mean, he's satting really well, and it probably is okay to go ahead and try to take him home. So had him loaded on a stretcher inside and outside the hallway, and he started vomiting, and his color completely changed, and I really still don't know why he turned the color that he did, but it was almost like a yellow. I don't know, it's very strange, and he looked very sick. So I was like, no, we're not taking him home. Well, it ended up that the ER doctor, myself, my mom, and my husband were pretty much screaming in the middle of the hallway trying to get this man to understand, you cannot send this baby home. So anyway, after a long time, he decided to actually, I told him that the consequences would be on him, that if something happened to my baby, if we left the hospital and something happened to my baby, that he would be the one held responsible for that. Because where we're at, and with the training that the EMTs, and even though they're great, don't get me wrong, but when you get into a respiratory distress place like that, you need to be in hospital. That's just all there is to it. You need to be with trauma and things people that can really know, respiratory therapists that really know what to do to help you. So anyway, I got my way, needless to say. When we ended up being kept, we had to stay in the ER for a long time that night. And he ended up about 45 minutes after the whole incident of us begging for this doctor to keep us. He had a respiratory distress incident, and his numbers went down into the 70s. Took like 3 nurses and 4 or 5 respiratory therapists to try to even get him, even with oxygen, to a safe spot. Had we went home, that would have been happening just about coming up the Ocoee River. And I know a lot of people probably don't even know where that's at, but for us, that's a river gorge that separates basically our end of the county, which is very rural, to the other end of the county where there is a little bit more city life, if you want to consider it that. But anyway, you can get to stores quicker and medical help quicker. Where we're at, it's very rural, and there's not a lot of opportunities as far as medical. We don't even have a local hospital any longer, even for the adults. So that's what we were faced with. So if we had brought him home, that would have been happening about the start of the Ocoee River, and we would have probably lost Jonathan, because it took a long time. I mean, we were scared in the hospital ER, much less on the river road trying to do CPR or bring up O2 sats. I mean, it was just it was terrifying. And side note, I sat and watched the doctor. I could see the doctor from where I was sitting. He never not one time turned around and looked at Jonathan or apologized or said anything. He just kept his mouth shut. But that's another story. But anyway, so they kept Jonathan, and that was really when his respiratory distress started up. We were in and out of the hospital just about every 2-3 months after that. We met with an ENT talking about, because he has a floppy airway and some swallowing or some airway difficulties, so decided we would talk to an ENT and about doing maybe a tonsil surgery. And so we did that. The first ENT we went to did not want to do a tonsil surgery. He did not want to do it, and now I know why. I mean, my goodness, I wish I'd have listened to him. But anyway, he didn't want the one in Chattanooga. He did not want to do it. So they referred us to Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee. So we went to Vanderbilt, had the airway, it's really an airway reconstructive surgery is what it ended up being. We were told that, yes, his tonsils and adenoids need to be removed, but we may get in there and realize that there needs to be some additional airway clearance issues that need to be dealt with, and we agreed to that. So long surgery, long recovery. Matter of fact, they told us that we could see Jonathan fairly soon, you know, the normal amount of time. But then it ended up, once they told us he was out of surgery and you should be able to go back in about 30 minutes, it ended up being like 2 hours. So we knew something was happening. We just didn't know what. When we walked in to see Jonathan in recovery, I passed out. That's how bad it was. He had nasal trumpets, and I don't know, I might be able to show a picture of that somehow. But anyway, he had nasal trumpets, which are, they're little round things that go in the nostrils that open up the airway there in the nose. And then he had his lip was stitched to his chin to keep his tongue, or I'm sorry, his tongue was stitched to keep his airway open. And eventually ended up having to have a C-collar on to keep his airway open. And so anyway, he was just, he looked terrible when we got to the recovery room. Scared me. I mean, I was going expecting to see a baby with a tonsil. You know, I didn't expect to go in and see what I saw, but terrifying. After that, Jonathan did not wake up for 6 days. We still don't know why. There's really no explanation as to why. I'm thinking, after have gone over all the possibilities in my mind, I think his body was just in so much pain. It just rejected. I mean, it's like, I can't deal with this. I'm sleeping. So ended up, he obviously did wake up, and things were okay for a little while. We ended up there for 2 weeks at Vanderbilt, was released, come home, and about 2 weeks later, he went into the worst respiratory distress that I have ever personally seen, and we have that on some videos as well. But literally his chest area, sternum was caving into his backbone. I mean, it would absolutely sink to the backbone and then come back up, and it was really terrifying. We had taken him back to Erlanger, and that happened in Erlanger. And so at that point in time, they did test to see if maybe it was, because it wasn't long post-op after the airway reconstruction. So they thought, well, maybe there's some swelling, some scar tissue, something might be in there blocking it that we can go in and quickly trim and fix. But that wasn't the case. He ended up, the two options I was given is they could go back in and shave pieces of the back of his tongue off, and another surgery that I'm like, no more cutting. We're not doing any more cutting. Do what you have to do, the safest option, the quickest option, and the easiest option to maintain Jonathan. And so that was a trach. Terrifying at first to know that your baby's going to have a trach. I mean, there's a lot to taking care of a trach, but after it's all said and done, it was so intimidating in the beginning. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious, I will never, ever be able to do what has to be done to take care. It ends up being like breathing, no joke. I mean, it's that easy. The trach changes the suctioning, everything that goes along with a trach. You just adapt, and it's not that bad. I mean, it really isn't. Yes, there's a lot to it, but you have to be very alert at all times. But it's not as horrible as what I had first thought that it was going to be. With support and help from family and doctors and nurses and things like that, I've grown pretty confident with his trach. He really does good with his trach. It ended up being probably, I wish we'd have went with that option, but you have to do things sometimes and don't really always understand why you have to go through them. But trach is one thing that he'll probably always have to have it anyway, but it's not something that I really want removed, because the good thing about it is if he does start getting to these respiratory distresses, you can go in and get some of these secretions that are causing such distress, to where before you couldn't. I mean, it was you just had to wait it out and hope for the best. But now we're actually able to go in and clear this stuff out, and in hopes that we'll get it taken care of before things get too bad. So that's basically where we're at with Jonathan. I don't know if I mentioned it in the previous video, but Jonathan is nonverbal. He's immobile. He uses a wheelchair. He has special adaptive seating. He, let's see if I can show you a little bit of his head control. He has hardly any head control. He's pretty much supported. We have to support him to sit. And he has no leg usage. He can kick and move his legs, but as far as bearing weight or crawling or anything like that, he doesn't do. So he's pretty much 100% care all the time, but he is 100% joy, and I wouldn't be wanting to do anything else but to take care of Jonathan. So that kind of brings you up to where we're at from birth on up till now. Say hi. Say hi. That's where we're at. We're at from birth on up till now. The VNS, I touched a little bit on the VNS about it being a device that's implanted, and it helps with the seizures. You can wave the magnet and it can stop a seizure. It has some of the bigger seizures that Jonathan doesn't have very often, but he has had some, and that's another operation that he had. Very simple. I mean, it was in and out, no complication really. There's nothing really. He doesn't even act sore, or even after it, he really don't act like it bothered him too much. So I would recommend that surgery to a hard to control. He has stuff to say, man. Say hi. Let's put your talk on. Put your talk on. Can you say hi? Can you say, please like and subscribe? Thank you for watching. Can you say that? Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I appreciate everyone taking time out to listen. Yeah, I tell them to listen to Jonathan's story. I just thought that before we get into some of the daily routines and the things that we have to do with Jonathan, that it would be a good idea to give you a little bit of a background and history on him. So, please subscribe to our channel and keep us active, and we will try to share things with Jonathan's life in hopes to make someone else's life a little bit easier, or just a glimpse into our life and what it's like to take care of something so precious. And I mean, that is with absolute 100% sincerity. He's a joy to take care of. He's always been a blessing. He's never been a burden. It's not a burden. It's a joy. And we hope we have many, many, many years left with Jonathan, because he is so much fun to be around. Can you tell him bye-bye? Bye-bye. Thank you guys for watching.